This week, episode 350 of Stogie Geeks, Nelson and I get to interview CigarMan Andy. Every once in a while, you hear an interesting story about this fascinating industry. Smoking cigars at the Old Virginia Tobacco store, Andy was introduced to Benji Menendez at an event. Benji happened to be having trouble that day using Photoshop, and Andy fixed the problem. And then Benji asked Andy to teach him Photoshop. Andy said, "Sure, if you teach me tobacco, that'd be pretty cool." Then Andy started reviewing cigars on forums, and from there, he became a rep. And shortly after that, he decided to move out to the West Coast, and he became a broker. And he ended up representing brands such as 724, Los Blancos, Espinosa, La Palina. That's okay. It's going to be a long day. It's been a long morning. And eventually, Christoph. Now, Andy is retired, and he helps a few companies offline. I cannot wait to hear this fascinating story. And after the interview, we're going to wrap up the year and kind of give some highlights about what happened as we wrap up this crazy year of the plague, or the year that we call 2020. Stogie Geeks episode 350 starts right now.
This is a Security Weekly production. Broadcasting live from G-Unit Studios in Rhode Island, it's the show where cigars burn slow, ashes fall fast, and cocktails flow steady. It's the Stogie Geek Show. Welcome, everyone, to the Stogie Geek Show. Joe and I are already silly.
Oh, yeah.
Joe Josepa, a.k.a. Joe Hollywood, is here with me in studio.
I'm fired up. So we also have remote Drew, who is remote over in Texas. Look at you. You got some Stogie Geek swag going on in the background.
Got my banner.
Where are you?
Yeah. Oh, yeah. I'm all set up for the Stogie Geek mobile lounge.
Confidence. Confidence isn't walking into a room with your nose in the air, thinking you're better than anyone else. It's walking into a room and not having to compare yourself to anyone in the first place.
Havana Cigar Club, located in Warwick, Rhode Island, is a great place to enjoy a drink and a cigar. Stogie Geeks listeners can find a $5 off coupon on our website by clicking the HCC logo.
Welcome to Stogie Geeks episode 350. Whew. Take a deep breath after that one. This is episode 350 of Stogie Geeks. I am your host, Joe Josepa. Privilege and an honor to be here on the other side of the wall, but not in studio. Because of COVID regulation, we have, I guess you can say, remote, even though he's kind of in the building, but not in the building, in the suite, maybe, right? Is that how that works? Not only is today Ugly Sweater Day, it is the last episode of 2020 of Stogie Geeks. You want to follow Nelson or myself on Facebook. There might be some experimental series between now and then. I'm experimenting with stuff. That's dangerous. That's when people question my integrity. But anyway, we have a remote Nelson, who's right next door.
Hey, what's up, Stogie Geeks? Glad to be back on. It's been an interesting ride here on Stogie Geeks. I'm glad I made it to the end. Joe hasn't thrown me off yet, so thanks a lot, Joe.
You know, the wheels on the bus are like, you know, dude, it's crazy.
The training wheels are still on.
It's crazy. It's crazy. And I'm here I am, or here we are. It's the last episode of the year. Super excited about this interview. You had met Andy, and you told me his story, and I gave it in our intro, which I thought was pretty flawless until I said La Palina wrong. But it's okay. I don't worry. I've been mispronouncing cigar names since I started here. So why would 2020, why would the last show be any different? Prediction for 2021, I'm still going to mispronounce cigar names. It's just the way it goes. Anyway, I want to introduce CigarMan Andy to Stogie Geeks. This is his first time coming on the show. Andy, welcome to the program. How are you?
Thank you. Doing well, thanks. Just enjoying life and a good stogie.
You sent me a story, and it's fascinating, right? It's fascinating. Correct me if I'm wrong. You're hanging out at Old Virginia Tobacco, and you get introduced to Benji Menendez. He's got some problems with Photoshop. You fix the problems. He asked you to teach you a little bit more about Photoshop, and he taught you some stuff about tobacco.
Oh, yeah.
Let's elaborate on that, because, here at Stogie Geeks, we always talk about the brick and mortar experience, right? We know that in a crazy world and in a COVID world, online, I get it. You got virtual HERFs and virtual things going on and all these little forums and everything like that. But, this is a classic, like, who you might run into walking into a brick and mortar. Take us through that story if you could. Okay.
Well, I used to hang out in D.C. I used to live in that area. And in Sterling, Virginia, there's a guy by the name of Gary Pesh. He has a chain of stores called Old Virginia Tobacco. And it was right around the corner from my house. So I'd go over there, smoke cigars, and got to know the guys well. And they said, oh, hey, you got to come down. We've got a couple of events coming on. We have Saul Fontana coming in. He comes in every year this time. And Benji Menendez is going to be in, or Lito Gomez, or you never know who's going to show up there. So I come in. Benji's there, and he's right before the event starts. He's trying to take pictures with a digital phone back then. Not a digital phone, but a digital camera.
Yep.
And he's telling me, I have a real hard time getting this stuff to work with Photoshop. So I said, well, I happen to know Photoshop pretty well. Maybe I can help. And so I fixed it on his laptop. And he asked me, he says, can you teach me Photoshop? I said, yeah, it's not that hard to teach. And I said, give me your phone number and I'll work with you while over the phone. And he said, but I got a deal for you. He said, what's that? He said, I'll teach you Photoshop, but you got to teach me about tobacco. And he started, I had no idea really who Benji was at the time. The more we talked, the more I found out that Benji's father and Benji were the owners of Menendez y Garcia factory in Cuba. And his father in 1934 had blended the Monte Cristo number 2. And so now I'm really fascinated with this guy.
Sure.
And at the time, he had just done an article in Cigar Aficionado called The Son of Monte Cristo, and it was all about Benji. So I had Benji sign. This is the first autograph in the cigar industry I got. I had Benji sign the book. And Benji and I started talking, and it opened up a wide relationship between the two of us. I wanted to know about the different profiles of the tobaccos from the Dominican Republic, from Nicaragua, from Honduras. Yeah, how do you blend a cigar? At the time, it was funny because Benji had been with General Cigars for a long time. And he had switched over and started working for Altadis. And he had just blended a cigar called the Trinidad. Mm-hmm. And it wasn't ready yet. It's kind of a funny story. He told them, he said, I can't tour with this cigar. It's not ready yet. It needs another 6 months. And they said, you're going to tour with it. And he said, if I tour with this, it'll be the last cigar I tour with for Altadis. And as a result of that incident, he went back to General Cigars right after that tour. And so I used to cherish when we would have at that time, it was RTVA, going to the RTVA and eventually IPCPR, now PCA. Yeah.
Soon to be ABC. No, that's
yeah. That's
rumor. But
and Benji would do things like he'd say, "Well, I'm working on a cigar that is going to be called the Benji Menendez," and he would roll up a pachucha. Now, what a pachucha is you may take a leaf of Lajero and a leaf of Seco, and you roll it up and you light it and you blow the smoke. And he would say, "Open this hand of capa, of wrapper, and blow the smoke into the hand, And I would, and he goes, that's what I'm trying to accomplish. So he would teach me about blending, and he would introduce me to people, such as we talked earlier about Ricky Rodriguez, who blends a lot for CAO. And Benji is probably the most humble man in the cigar industry, and probably one of the most knowledgeables. And he would say things to me like, oh, Andy, I want to introduce you to one of the new blenders. I'm learning so much from them. And keep this in mind, after 35 or 40 years of blending, you're saying you're learning from these new guys? That's telling you something.
Yeah. Yeah.
So he always taught me, stay teachable, stay open-minded. You know, he gave me a line that has been a mantra for mine since day one. Smoke what you like and like what you smoke. So
semicolon, but experiment a little.
Experiment. And never give up on a cigar when you've only smoked one of them, or if you've only smoked a quarter of it or a third of the cigar. Take it as far as you can and see there may be something further on that you're going to enjoy. And cigars have just been a passion for me. I've been smoking cigars since I'm 17 years old. And obviously that's a few years.
Yeah, it's like 3 years.
Yeah, 3 or 4. My ponytail is as gray as my T-shirt. So, yeah, that'll tell you something.
Holy crap, I didn't know till this minute he had a ponytail. I had no idea.
Here you go.
My first, like, I don't say experiment with Benji. I've had the Potagus Master Series, right?
Uh-huh.
And I was like, this is good. You know what I mean? And then we found a box online, and we ended up buying a box. This is back in 2017 when I first started Stogie Geeks. But I've always known like some of the stuff that he's done and some of the names. And now it's like, you know, you kind of give us a name of like the Wayback Machine, right? Or at least my Wayback Machine. You know, when I owned a cigar shop in the late 90s through the beginning of 2000s, you know, it's like you know, you that's one of those names that have been around then. You know what I mean? Mm-hmm. And you know, that's why I found your story fascinating, because time frame wise, when you met him and there was a problem of Photoshop and digital cameras, for you younger Stogie Geeks, there was a time where you took a picture on a digital camera, loaded it up on your computer, put it through Photoshop. It had filtering. There was no Instagram, which allowed you to snap a picture, change all the settings, take out red eye or whatever the heck it is, and then boom, you have a picture. Like those days, you know what I mean? And it's crazy. Like that, I remember taking pictures of stuff, and I remember doing old school websites for cigar shops way back then when I had my business. And like, you know, we kind of got a camera and did it at the same angle and had a piece of felt, so it had a solid background, and individually took pictures of product and then put it up on the website and whatnot. Now you can just have I have my client snap a picture with their phone, put it into a web page editor. The web page editor has Photoshop-esque settings, enough to get the job done, and then rip them and then post them on the web and they get done. So it's amazing how you met him at a time. Because if you met him in 2018, that wouldn't have been a problem for him.
Not at all.
Yeah.
Do you know what year that was
journey.
when you met him?
It was, I want to say about 2000, a little after 2000.
Yeah, sure. Yep. Yeah, things were still separate there from a digital.
MySpace was just about to come online, and
oh wow.
You know, email was, you know, you got mail.
Yep.
You know,
after a 56K dial-up modem, and you know what I mean. Yeah.
56. Boy, you had the high 10 stuff, man. I was 14.4.
Yeah. Wow. Yeah. Well, you know, times have changed, right? And then,
right.
And then you became. So take us through that. So what type of? I want to stay there for a second before I jump around, but I'll probably jump around because that's just how I am, right? Like, what kind of lessons did you learn, and where did he point you to? Because you got to remember, in 2000, right? Like, you know, there wasn't social media influencer program going on. Forums were there, but they weren't really there quite yet. So you had some hardcore people that are on the forums. I used to dabble in forums way back when. I'm guilty as charged. I am not like the modern day forum guy. You know what I mean? That's one of the reasons why we have Nelson here. He's the eyes and ears for that, right? And so like where did he point you to go look, right? Because when I learned my tobacco journey, and we can get into that later on, like, it was like book. It wasn't like, yeah, you go to this website, watch this interactive video, and you see the fields. It was like, yeah, man, like you get the book, or I almost call it a process back then when you would go to like a cigar aficionado, and I don't know, this is how my brain works, so I apologize if it doesn't like articulate to the listener or you guys. But like, when you read something like say 20 years ago, and as a consumer, you had to like read between the lines to kind of re-educate yourself about the product. So, yep. Okay, so I did articulate that. That's great. So, that's change. And so, from there, like, where did he point you, and what types of tidbits that you've learned? And I just want to see if they're still in existence today.
Well, it's funny because a lot of it really is. At the time, I was a member of Club Stogie on the forum, Stogie Geeks, Cigar Pass, and Drew Newman had just started one called CFCF, Cigar Family Charitable Foundation's page.
Yep.
And so he said, do some reading on this, that, and the other. And I would ask him questions like, well, what's the difference between Ligero and Seiko and Viso? And he actually sent me a chart at one time which showed, everybody has heard of Ligero, Viso, and Seiko.
Right.
I mean, most people don't realize how many leaves there are, from Desflorado on a female plant underneath the flower to Ligero, Viso, Seiko, Volado, and sand leaves. So I would look at the charts and I would ask him, what's the difference? And could you smoke this by itself? And he would tell me little things about, you can check out by looking on Wikipedia. At the time was still relatively new, but they had information about tobaccos. There was an article it was directed to from AJ Fernandez, which was literally a dissertation for a school project for his degree on the history of tobacco, and learning, just a lot of the little tidbits back there. So the thing about the forums, and I'm still a member of a couple of the forums, still go on. The forums at that time, you would go on, and not only would you see, Benji wasn't a forum guy, but we had Dion Giolito, we had Pete Johnson in 2006 started coming on, and Gene Arganese, and so on down the line. There were a lot of brands back then that no longer exist or have since sold, like Tony Barani, and Gene. They both sold out to CI. He would have me look on the forums and ask questions, and they would answer me with loving information like, hey, stupid, use search. Stop asking a question that's been asked 20 times. Go on to search. You'll find your answers. And so that's when I discovered if you're going to be anywhere in the cigar industry, you have to have a thick skin and learn to give it back as good or better than once you get it. But he would research a lot of that stuff, and he would say, get to meet some of the people in the industry. So he would say, go to every event you can. And pretty soon I had met Raymond Schur, who was Abo's right hand with Davidoff. Saul Fontana, who had a cigar called Baccarat, who's Christian Aroa's uncle when he was alive.
Mm-hmm.
I would start meeting these people, and I would ask them questions. And then eventually I took a trip to the Dominican Republic and started learning about tobacco. I would go to a factory or two out there. Went to Fuente back in 2005 for the first time. Got to know the people at the factory then. And I have to tell you this story because this is a to me, one of the greatest days of my life. I got invited to Gary Pish's 35th anniversary of Old Virginia Tobacco. And I have a picture of what I call the Rogues Gallery. Everyone was there. I had Jorge Padron, I had Ernie Carrillo, I had Christian Aroa, Carlito Fuente, Eileen Frankie Odgetsner, who you know from who used to own CAO with Tim, her brother, and her father. And we had all these people there. Benji Menendez. Benji introduces me to Jose Blanco. Jose Blanco looks at me, and so we were talking about La Aurora earlier. I was smoking a Preferido Cameroon.
Ooh, Johnny's favorite, our producer.
And I had the tube in my pocket. And the first thing that Jose Blanco says to me is, you know, if you buy that cigar and you can buy that same cigar without the tube, it's $4 less.
Yep.
You know? And it started relationships with all these people. So Benji and Gary introduced me to just about everybody that you'd want to meet in the industry. Lito Gomez and all these guys. And it was just a wonderful, wonderful event. And I knew at that point, this is where I wanted to go. And, you know, it's funny. I was reviewing cigars, and I think I may have mentioned this when I sent you the little blurb. I did a review on I think it was Cigar Pass, on the Arganese. It was the Nicaragua.
Yep.
Yeah.
Yep.
And I got an email, a private message. Back then, that's where you got your private messages, from a guy who said, "You are the first guy who nailed it, what I was trying to accomplish with that cigar. The RTDA is coming up. Why don't you come and be my guest? I'll get you a ticket. I'll leave it at the front. You just come in and sign in, and boom." So I go to the RTDA, and I find Gene Arganese, and he hired me on the spot to be a rep. And the rest is basically history. You know, he was explaining to me the difference between repping and brokering. And he says, you know, if you really wanted to broker, you could, or you can rep. If you broker, you can handle multiple lines. And to me, this is an unfortunate thing for some guys, but not to me. It means, oh, gee, I can get 3, 4 brands, 5 brands, and I can smoke everybody's cigars, and I can compare them, and yada, yada, yada. And so eventually, and I got to tell you the story, I'm going to give kudos. All of a sudden now, not only do we have MySpace, we've got a new app coming out. It's called Facebook. And I get on Facebook, and one day I get an email on Facebook, Ghost from the Past. And it turns out it was my first wife.
Oh, boy.
And I had never fallen out of love with her. And we started conversing, and next thing I know, I'm talking to Jean, and I'm on my way to California, where she's at, from Virginia, and Jean gives me California.
Wow.
And so I reconciled with Marisa, and we've been back together 11 years. We're going to be married in 10 years again here in just a couple of weeks. But all of a sudden, I get a reputation that if you can sell Arganese, you can sell anything. Okay? Keep this in mind. I'm selling boxes wholesale for $70 and $75 that you can buy online for like $39.
Right.
And I'm selling them to the stores. Then I get phone calls from this guy and that guy, and pretty soon I've got 4 lines. You know, I'm selling great cigars. 724 is an awesome cigar.
Yes.
And Kurt Kendall, you couldn't ask for a nicer guy to work with, you know, and I'm selling Los Blancos, so we won't get into that one. And but I enjoyed the Los Blancos cigars. And all of a sudden I'm with La Polina and then Christoph. And, you know, somebody said to me, well, you're not a typical broker, are you? I said, no, you know, I guess I'm kind of a brand builder, because that's what I like to do.
Yes.
I like to take a brand that nobody's heard of and make it work. When I took La Polina, they were in 6 stores in California. And I'll never forget this. you want me to sell a cigar that nobody's heard of that's retailing for $26 to $30 a cigar and sell it? And he said, yes. And I said, okay.
Yep.
And I got them in 110 stores.
Right. Wow. Breath. You that takeaway. There's so many things that I want to get into. Brand awareness, influencer, having thick skin in the industry, my La Polina story, my Kurt Kendall story. But before we go there, and it's now 38 minutes before Nelson says anything. Nelson, you want to chime in?
I do, yeah. I wanted to go back to when you were Benji and you were talking about when you were doing the tobacco. And I'm sorry, I'm going way back. We've gone on a journey with Andy, and by the way, great guest. I love this journey we're hearing about. It's not things you typically hear about. That whole process where he lit the tobacco, and have you seen that done after that moment?
Yeah, every time I'm at a factory.
So that's a common practice.
It's a common practice. Actually, I was involved with a company where I was given part ownership in it for a while, and I was helping blend a couple of cigars. And it's the same process the master blender and I went through. We went to, I'm sure you know who Hochi Blanco is.
Yep.
You know who Hochi is, right?
Yes, sir.
Okay. So Hochi's got 7 warehouses, each the size of Raiders of the Lost Ark, full of tobacco. And he would say, well, what kind of tobacco were you looking for? And for instance, I was looking for one called Talanga, which is Connecticut grown in Honduras. And we pulled out a bale, and then we walked over and picked up a piece of Piloto Ligero and Olor Viso, and we rolled the pachucha, and I was blowing it in hands from different batches of the Talanga to find a wrapper I would like. Flavor was there. You can smell it. It gets into the tobacco. That smoke gets into the tobacco. And when you up to your nose, you just get an aroma. So I learned about it originally from Benji, but every master blender that I have ever sat with or talked with or looked at them blending, that's their process they use.
That's awesome.
So,
yeah. That's it's.
I did have another thing I wanted to ask Andy was, at that moment where you said you were hired on the spot, moving forward, did you have a mentor? I mean, because you learned some in your Photoshop trade-off. You learned some things about tobacco, but did you have a mentor for the sales aspect part of it? You said you took something to 110 shops. So, was there a mentor that you listened to?
It's funny. I knew a few reps. In Virginia, I met a rep who taught me what not to do. He did an event. This guy, I won't tell you his name, but he had worked for Ashton, and I'm sure he's no longer with Ashton. And he had said, oh yeah, somebody asked him, how do you do Maduro tobacco? And he said, oh, we put chocolate and ammonia in a container and fermented tobacco in it. And I'm going, what? So I learned a long time ago from people like that, if you don't have an answer, don't give it. Okay, don't fake it.
Right.
People aren't stupid. And so I would watch what the guys who were not successful were doing to learn what not to do. And then I would hang on to people like Michael Doherty from Fuente and watch what he does, because Michael is just one of the best reps I've ever met. Another really good one was Ron Wagner, who was with General Cigars for years. Now he's with Rocky Patel. Eventually, the guys who worked with me with Christoph, I would watch what they did that they were successful at and what not to. Now, that's great for a basis, but every area is different. For instance, in your neck of the woods in the Northeast, a lot of the reps wear ties. Where I'm at in California, you get laughed out of the store if you walk in with a tie. So you got to learn to take the positive stuff and make it your own and put your own spin on it. So what's worked for me is that what makes a good rep is a relationship. It's all based on relationships. Yes, you have to have a cigar that can hold its own. But if you don't have a relationship, they're not going to take your cigar. So I learned to hang out at shops, get to know the clientele at shops, learn not to just start handing free cigars out to people because I could. I always ask a manager, because one time I was in a shop and I watched a rep say, "Hi, I'm from yada yada brand, and here, try our new cigar," and hands out about 15, 20 cigars. And the owner pulled him aside, and this is early on. The owner pulled him aside and said, "You just gave away and took about $400 out of my pocket." So I never give cigars out without asking a manager or an owner first, or who are your money spending customers that you want to take care of. And you'll learn. It's all by experience. Making appointments instead of just dropping in. If you drop into a store, don't do it to sell. Do it to hang out. And if they want to talk sales with you, they will. So it's all stuff you learn. But my mentor, in the bar none is the best, is a compilation of about 30 different reps that I met. I just took the best and left the worst.
Yeah, no, that's great.
Yeah, I've been involved in multiple facets within this industry, and I had a 9-month stint as a rep broker, and it was the same way, right? I would first go into the shop, never to sell, right? Always kept the thing in the trunk or the backpack. Not much has changed, Nelson, just so you know. A Ziploc bag full of samples, right?
Joe's not really a humidor guy.
Yeah, right. And it's like I would go there, I would introduce, find out who the owner is, and I wouldn't do it secretly. I would just be like, he comes in on this day, that day. Okay, cool. Make a mental note, sit down. Always fascinated with their humidor, right? I love going into different humidors. Here in Rhode Island, we have like 39 shops, and we're only like a 30-minute drive through with no traffic. So basically, they're like Dunkin' Donuts or Starbucks. They're on every corner almost, right? And so,
15 feet.
but they all have different characteristics. Some of them have cool stuff. Some of them have stuff I'm into. Some of them are just they're run of the mill, right? And ironically, out of the 39, 2 of them have taken me out for either coffee or a beer or a drink to vet my knowledge and find out if I know my shit or if I'm full of shit. That's why most of them do terrible, right? That's just personal observation. But when I was a rep, I would just kind of, be myself and find out where the owner is. And after I bought something of theirs that I think that I would want to try, like legitimately want to try, we got to talking. I'd introduce myself, and then I would always go right before I leave, you tab out and whatnot, and I would always go to the car and then come back and then give them samples and then walk out. Because to me, it was a respect for time thing. It wasn't if it wasn't an appointment, right? It wasn't it's like it's not my agenda. It's you own the shop.
Theirs.
I would love the opportunity to have shelf space, and that's what I did, and it went well, right? I left after 9 months, just because it just wasn't a good fit, right? It just was not a good fit. There. And so, but that was I was myself. I had respect for their time. I ended up doing promotions, and it ended up leading into other stuff and whatnot. And yeah, we've had some super cool events, and it was fun. But having respect for their time, and I've gotten in a ton of conversations with idiotic reps. La Flora Dominicana comes to mind this year, right? When, we're talking about the Northeast distribution thing, and you tell me how good his cigar is. I'm like, I don't care how good your cigar is. I'm not going to try it. He's like, why? I go, because if the cigar owner orders it in March, it's not being delivered till July. It's not fair to them. You know what I mean? Well, let me tell you how the industry works. Oh, please do. Right? Please tell me how this fascinating industry works. And like the kid was just running, and I'm like, dude, you didn't even know like distribution 101, right? Here comes the hate mail. Email the hate mail to Nelson at StogieGeeks.com. He has time for that, right? Here's another sponsor out the door, right? And like it is what it is. Or I'll go into a cigar shop and the rep would be like, oh, but that's a classic thing, a classic problem when the rep would just stop passing out cigars, right? I have mixed feelings on that. Always get the shop owner's permission. Always. If I went to the second time and they recognized me as the rep for that particular cigar, and they'd be like, some of them have even they knew I was the rep, and they said, hey, if you have any samples you want to pass out to the guys, go for it. I didn't even have to ask, because I think if you do it properly, it's like business, right? If you do it properly, you won't have to ask for permission. Right.
That goes back to building the relationships that Andy was talking about.
Absolutely. You have to do that,
It does. The only time I've ever handed cigars to people in shops without asking the owner's permission is if somebody's in the humidor and I'm working his humidor for him, just helping out.
Yep.
And the guy's buying 4 cigars. I go, hey, if you buy 6, I'll give you one of mine.
Yeah.
And, so I just boosted his sales.
Yes.
Not declined him.
Right.
And thankfully, a lot of the time it's, oh, you're looking at this brand. Well, I represent that brand. So if you buy 2 more, I'll give you 1 free.
Yep.
So there's a way to do it.
Yep.
But yeah, the owners will tell you, once you get to know it, once you become a part of the fixture, if I'm going into a store and it's 10 years since I started going into that store, they know me pretty well by then, if they're the same people.
Right.
And so they're going to tell me what they want me to do or what they don't want me to do.
So I want to get an idea, so we can talk a little bit of business here. I want to get an idea of time frame. Where were you? No, I knew where you were. You were in California. What year is it when you were representing 724 Los Blancos, Espinosa? That's fascinating. I'd love to hear about that. La Polina and Christoph. What year was that? Because that's going to determine where I go with the conversation.
Yeah, it was late 2010.
Okay, so 2010. So 2010, where was okay? So 724, right? New on the scene, right? Espinosa, really boutique at that time, right? La Polina. Classic, but kind of get a reputation of why they price the Davidoffs. Some of them are really, really good, right? Some of them are really, really good and can rival some Davidoffs, especially some of the new stuff that Davidoff's coming out with. And then Christoph, which for us here in the Northeast, 2008 is when they started to kind of ramp up. So you have a lineup of some. And Los Blancos, which is down at CI. So you kind of had a hard task in front of you from a marketing and branding perspective. So, what were your approaches other than giving out samples to the reps? You got to educate them, like 724. There's this guy named Kirk Kendall, it was his old factory. We know the story. At the time, he had 2010. He had the Hustler. He had it was only the regular.
He didn't have the Hustler back then. He was the 724. That was it.
That was it. The original blend. Okay.
Right, and then he came out with the 1941.
Yep.
Which came out right before he came out with Hustler and Spider. Those were 2013, 2014.
Okay. Yeah. So you had one line, different sizes, but one line for 724, Los Blancos, which is half the price online, Espinosa, right, and then La Polina, which can be conceptually considered as overpriced at the time. I get that, and then Christoph. So what approaches did you use? Because you had a challenging lineup when you walked in the door versus I don't know, Altadis, General.
Well, Okay, so let me fix you up on the timeline just a little bit on this. So, in 2010, I had Los Blancos, Organis, and Christoph. And then I brought in 724 in 2011.
Gotcha.
2011, Los Blancos and I kind of started getting ready to part ways. Brought in La Polina. Espinosa was about 2012. And then, there were brands that I was starting to get a reputation. So I was getting calls from different, like there was a group that had like 30 different brands in it. I mean, they had like 1502 and Ezra Zion and, just an assortment of cigars, Rodrigo. I kept them for 6 months. I said, I don't think it's going to work with us because it's too many lines. It's like going in with General Cigars. I'm going to need a catalog to try and do anything.
Mm-hmm.
But I gave them 6 months. I had a guy who had me, I stayed with him 6 months, a guy by the name of Lou Rodriguez, who did the classic, I want to film the cigar industry statement. What does your cigar taste like? What other brands? I don't know. I don't smoke anybody's but my own. That's all I ever smoke. Nothing else is worth smoking. By the way, have you ever seen a Lou Rodriguez? So that gives you an idea. And I would judge how hard I would work for a brand based on the owner. How's the owner going to respond to people when I bring them out?
That's a good point, too.
Kurt Kendall is awesome.
Mm-hmm.
And I love Kurt to death. Kurt would come out 2-3 times a year. And, I would let him talk.
Yeah.
When you have an owner, you shut up and let him talk.
Yep. Whoa, he just had a mute moment. All right, anyway, he's got some technical.
Did we lose audio?
Yeah, we lost audio, and then it looks like he lost video. He'll figure it out. Are you there, Andy?
I'm here.
All right, cool. You were on Kurt Kendall.
Okay. So Kurt Kendall's a great guy, and he knows how to talk to people and do the business. And when Kurt talks, you shut up.
Yep.
Okay.
Plus,
Let
he's
him do the
cool.
job.
He's cool. He's into tattoos and hot rods, like legitimately. Like, you know what I mean?
Boats, and motorcycles, and guitars.
Yep. Yeah. He's like, dude, he's super cool.
Yeah. Kendall's awesome. So, you just kind of got to massage your way around and see what works and what shops, and who not to bring. There was a brand I worked for. I'm trying to remember the guy's name now. He had a brand out of Miami. But the guy, here's a prime one for you. I had Burger and Argente.
Mm-hmm.
I would get like 20 stores for Burger and Argente. Mike would come out, Mike Argente, open his mouth, and I'd lose 6 stores.
Yeah, sure.
Yeah. So you got to know who to bring out and who not to.
Gotcha.
You have to learn your business. I won't bring any names into a few of the companies that are still active that I'm not with that were bad partings, but most of the partings that I had were because the owner really he was his worst enemy.
Yeah, sure. That was my stint with the experience with Broco. We just couldn't see eye to eye, and I'm just like, yeah, I'm out. Like, peace, And he's not in the industry anymore. Go figure.
Yeah.
And you just know it's gotta be a feeling. Like, I know I talk about this on other shows, but it's like you just be you, and there's a feeling. And going to a cigar event shouldn't have to be stressful for the rep or broker, right?
No.
And yeah, you do have to have thick skin in this game. I know you began today's interview with that, which is so true. I mean, there are so many companies that just have thin skin, and they worry, or they're externally centered, or they're trying to be like somebody else. Like, dude, or chica, like, you know, just get your stuff together and be you, and just, you know, at the end of the day, smoke cigars and make money. You know,
That's it.
like,
That's
you
it.
know, just smoke cigars and make money, and if you can have a good time along the way, then cool. If not, then you're not doing it right.
That's it. And here's the key. A lot of reps become reps because they think they can have a lot of fun, smoke for free, and make a little money on the side. And when you're a broker, the first thing you learn when you first start brokering is you have to have enough money to last you at least a year before you start making anything.
That's true. And
especially if you're a brand builder.
right. Plus, you got to do your own travel and travel expenses and all of that stuff, and expenses for just putting on events, and it's crazy. And you know.
Do. I had a rep come up to me one day, and I'll never forget this. He said, "Hey, I really appreciate you and respect what you do, but you need to help me on something." I said, "What's up?" He goes, "I went into a place for the first time, and I don't know what I said to piss people off, but they were busting my balls like there was no tomorrow, and I didn't say anything that deserved it." I said, "Dude, you and here again, you have to have a thick skin and learn to give it back better than you get it. If they didn't like you, they wouldn't talk to you.
True.
If they're busting your balls, it means they like you."
Right.
Okay.
Right.
You just got to learn how to do it and learn what not to say to people, because there are reps that broach. Yeah. I love the rep that walks in and he goes, "Well, what are you smoking?" "Oh, I'm smoking a Macanudo Hyde Park." "Oh, that cigar sucks."
Yeah. Sure. Yeah.
What kind of a rep does that?
Yeah. You should all be about the experience, and you should be about, you know, the work effort that goes into each stick in the premium cigar industry. And
well, here's the thing. Okay, I got a little thing that happened with Christoph, but I still like Christoph cigars. I still like the smokes. And one thing about Christoph, they're into bottle rolled. Okay, most people don't really get into the style rolling, whether it's booked or into bottle or simple into bottle. But one thing about into bottle, I've never had a plugged Christoph ever. And that's a big plus. When a guy lights a cigar and it's like trying to suck a grape through a straw, that's not an enjoyable thing.
Right.
So, you got to know about your cigars. It's not always about the blend. I always tell people when they start getting into real technical questions in a cigar shop at an event, well, where does your tobacco come from and what part of the plant, what priming is it? And they want to look big. I just kind of blow it off and answer as best I can. But there's only two things a consumer really needs to know about a cigar. They like it or they don't like it.
Right. Yeah, I did a whole stint on Cigar Club Radio pre-Stogie Geeks on the Entubado Road from Christoph. It's a super cool process, and you are right. You never have a plugged Christoph. It's and I think a good takeaway from what you've been saying here is you gotta always be in a state of consistent learning. Right? Always, because like anything else, everything's ever changing, and you gotta stay on top of whatever version of the business that you have. There, it's good advice.
Things change in this industry all the time. Now, it's ironic that you're the Stogie Geeks because I am a tobacco geek.
Yep.
Okay. I'm the idiot that goes to Dominican Republic, start in Santiago, go to Tamboril, go to Banao, go to Santo Domingo, and I'm in a car with a guy who knows what grows where, and I'm saying, help me to discover what different genus of plants look like.
Sure. Yeah.
If I'm going down the road and I see a 4-foot high plant with long, narrow leaves, and somebody says, "Well, what's that?" I want to be able to say that's piloto.
Right.
If it's a 7-foot plant with big fat leaves, I want to be able to say it's a lore. I want to know for myself. And if something I know can help somebody, great. I'm the idiot who goes, the only stupid question is the one you don't ask.
That's true. That's true. Nelson, you have anything you want to add?
Sorry, had to get off mute. Yeah, Andy, I was curious. You've been through a journey. You're retired now. You've met God knows how many people. I know you mentioned one moment earlier where you met some of the titans of the cigar industry back in the day. You have a photo. But I'm wondering, what was one of your favorite moments on this cigar industry journey that you've been on?
You're going to kind of laugh at this. I'm pretty close with the Fuente family. Okay. I do things socially with them. One of my favorite things was watching Liana Fuente trying to earn money for breast cancer. Now, my mother is 97, a 4-time cancer survivor. When Liana runs, she's got a shirt she wears, and in the middle of her back is my mother's name. So obviously, I'm a big supporter. Liana said if she can earn $40,000 for breast cancer, she was going to shave her head. We all got on a combination of our little group that you've joined in, the Zoom Cigar Bar, the Jeremiah Mirafeld and Fuente, Meet the Professor show, started talking about that. She raised $85,500 for breast cancer.
I actually watched the video of her shaving her head.
Her father shaved her head, and all the hair was donated for wigs for breast cancer. I was never as proud of anybody in the cigar industry as I was for her at that particular moment. That's one of my all-time favorite events. And there's one other one I want to bring up too, because it's kind of an important one for my key, but it may upset some people, it might not. I had dinner one night with Lito Gomez. This is back 9-10 years ago. And Lito and I were talking, and I said, hey, do you remember this picture? And it was from about 5-6 years previous. And he goes, yeah. I said, do you consider us friends? And he said, yes, I do. And I said, I can't. And he looked at me and said, what? I said, talk to me about you other than the cigar industry. What did you do? Where are you from? How did you grow up? Where did you go? And he talked to me about growing up in Uruguay and having a pawn shop and doing jewelry work and so on and so on. And I said, now we're brothers. One of the things that irritates me is somebody goes to an event, meets Rocky Patel one time, and all of a sudden he's my best friend in the world. Oh, I know Rocky well. Okay? Get to know people. The titans of the cigar industry are just people.
Yep.
All right? And they're wonderful. Don't get me wrong. If you look at them as gods or giants, hey, knock your socks off. But if you want to call somebody in the industry your friend, get to know them. Right. No more than just the cigars. There's a lot more to them. Even the Fuente family, who's had 3-4 generations of tobacconists, okay, 4 generations of making cigars. There's a lot of the personal family stuff that is really fascinating to get to know. Don Carlos was a very big horse fan. He loved horses, race horses, polo horses, didn't matter. He loved horses. Get to know them personally, and a whole nother world opens up to you. So I will tell you, I wanted to smack Rocky Patel one night. He came to our RV to watch a football game and called it a camper, and I wanted to smack him.
Well, some of them have their moments, but
they all do.
I gotcha. But yeah, no, that's very good advice. Like, they are people, and from this industry, one of the keys to success for me within this industry, whatever facet that I was in at the time, was being in that brick and mortar, similar to your story, right? And asking. And I tell the Stogie Geeks often, very often, throughout different interviews, like, you got to get involved with going to your local cigar shop. It's a riot. Some of it becomes nonsense. Some of it becomes very soap opera-esque sometimes. But
you never know who you're going to meet.
You never know. In a pre-COVID world, you never know who you're going to meet. Like, one of the most interesting seminar, I guess you could say seminars, they were just a bunch of dudes hanging out smoking, was meeting Jose Blanco. And Jose Blanco is a huge fan of this show, huge fan of Paul, the original founder of Stogie Geeks. And, you know, like, even like to get to know like the person, like Jose Blanco had some computer problems like 60 days ago. Like, he called Paul's cell. Like, I was literally in a meeting with Paul, the founder of Security Weekly and Stogie Geeks, and he's like, Jose Blanco's calling me on my cell phone. I'm like, well,
he's
pick it
good
up.
at that.
I'm like, pick it up. You can interrupt our meeting. Like, you know what I mean? He's like, hey. And he legitimately had like a computer problem. And he knows that Paul is founder of Security Weekly, and freaking Paul like did some stuff and hooked him up, and then next thing you know, freaking he sent him some of his private stash. You know what I mean?
I love stories like
as
that.
a thank you. And you know, I have stories like that with Kurt, right? I remember at the time I had a advertising agency. It's still open today. And I met Kurt at an event, and he was talking about like branding and this is all like he's about to go in the magazine, right, and stuff like that. And I'm like, well, what types of ideas are they doing? And he's telling me this idea. I was like, they don't even know you. I'm like, dude, you in front of your freaking car collection with your sleeves rolled up is enough for any advertiser. Like, I could have a field day with that. I emailed him a quote. He went with someone else. But it's like you got to know them. You know what I mean? And you have super cool stories of that, right? I remember going to the Manuel and Noah where they separate the preferitos. They did a stint with the La Aurora company, the Light the Legacy. You know, you get to smoke all the different preferitos and you smoke them all at once, and you know, it's an educational process. And then I've had the opportunity at like 2 years later to interview Manuel and Noah here in studio. And, you know, and interviews like that just happened. Like, he was next door at the cigar shop. You know what I mean? And I was like, yeah, you want to come to Stogie Geeks? Yeah, sure, blah, blah, blah. I'll be around. And then we just, you know, fired up the cameras and did it up, you know? And that was in the glory days when we only had 4 shows plus Stogie Geeks. Now we have 7 shows plus Stogie Geeks. And we're now a network of shows, and we have no time. But
do you know who James Orr is?
O-R is the last name?
Yeah.
James
Orr. O-R-R.
Oh, I don't. Oh, no.
Remember 3 Men and a Baby?
Yes.
He was the producer and director of that movie.
Okay.
He did a bunch of movies. Okay. So I'm sitting.
I was a little young in that movie. I was in the 80s, just so you know. I wasn't.
Well, if you got a movie channel, it shows up from time to time or on holiday classics. But I'm sitting in a cigar lounge, and I'm sitting with a guy. All I know is his name is James. I'd never met him before. And we're shooting the shit. And I'm telling this guy about this movie that I loved called Blowing Smoke, which you can't find anywhere. And James starts laughing. He said, "Wait, what's funny?" He goes, "Do you know I produced that movie? I directed that movie."
No kidding.
No, seriously.
Yeah.
And I said to him at that point, I said, I was very impressed with the fact that you took 5 non-smoking, cigar-smoking people and taught them how to smoke cigars with Padron Anniversarios, Opus X, and One-Off. He goes, "How'd you know that?" I said, "Well, I watched the extras and everything." And he goes, "Dude, you're my hero. Nobody knows who One-Off is. Nobody knows, nobody ever does this part." He said, "I've been doing these things for years. Do you ever see that video, Journey to the Chateau La Fuente? De Fuente?
The what?
The Journey to the Chateau de Fuente.
No.
To the Chateau de Fuente. It used to come when you bought like a box of Forbiddens.
Okay.
Like they'd have 2 Forbiddens and a DVD in a book. And anyway, I found out he produced that for Carlito.
Oh, no kidding.
And he was the original voiceover for that. And then apparently they didn't like his voice, so they had Andy Garcia go over it and do the narration afterwards. But it's running into people like that who you never know
Right.
who you're going to run into, you know? Yeah, I can't even begin to tell you how many actors, especially being out in LA or in Malibu or whatever you run into, you know, that you smoke with. I mean, I could go on and on and on about actor, musician, actor. But you just run into them at cigar shops, and you never know where you're going to find them.
Absolutely. Yeah. Yeah.
Hell, that's how I
cigar
found
people?
Joe.
I've run into a couple of local ones. I mean, obviously we're not California, right? You know,
Yeah.
we're here in the Northeast, but like James Woods would come to the Humidor Smoke Shop, and up until he stopped smoking cigars. But you know, he would come in and one night he'd be like, I like it here, I can hide. You know, because only 5-6 guys are not all starstruck, this and that and whatnot. I've being in Providence when I had my cigar shop, we had a couple of Patriots and either Red Sox or Paw Sox come in and get cigars and stuff like that, and you know, it's super cool. And they would hang out for a little bit and then just leave. And like I said, it's all part of that encompassing, embracing part of the community that you know, some of our Stogie Geeks listeners miss out on by not going into their local brick and mortar.
You want to have fun sometime? I'll tell you what. I was in the Valley, and I was sitting there smoking with Scott Baio, the first time. And he asked me, he goes, "What do you do?" I said, "Well, I'm the rep for such and such a company." And I said, "What do you do?" And you know, he said, "Oh, well, I'm an actor." But it was just fun to pretend like I didn't know who he was or what he did.
Yeah. Yep.
You know? Yeah. Did you ever watch Happy Days? No, I can't say I have. And then I messed with him, you know. But it was fun.
Andy,
you know?
You still have a ponytail, so something strikes me that you wore a leather jacket and a T-shirt in your day.
I did. I wore a leather jacket. I still wear leather jackets.
Hey, man, Happy Days. What is it? Live fast, love hard, and never let anyone use your comb.
Never let anyone use your comb.
That's advice I follow.
Oh yeah, you know, and roll your cigars, your cigarettes up. You know, if you know Kurt Kemby, you can see I had some dog walkers and I rolled them up in my sleeve. You know,
yeah,
you can get away with that with Kendall stuff or with Jesus Fuego's little cigarillos he does, but it's fun, and that's the main reason. If you do it right, if you listen and you just learn to be yourself, you can be a success selling cigars, make a little money, and enjoying life. Yeah. And meet some great people. Some of the greatest people I know are not just cigar makers; they own cigar shops.
Yes,
or I've just met in shops. And here's the thing about cigars that a lot of people don't get. This little thing right here. This is the great equalizer.
That it is.
More business deals are done over a cigar than over a drink. And I tell you, I have smoked with people who made minimum wage all the way to billionaires. Mm-hmm. And nobody treats you any different.
Right.
Well said, Andy. I say that often that, you know, I never said it that way. You put it way more eloquently than I did. But it's like an even keel. You go in a cigar shop, you don't know how much money the guy next to you makes, and you don't care. Like, you just don't care. Like, we're just there to enjoy the experience and have a great cigar.
And you know, there's a little bit of a love story with the cigars that you mentioned and we brushed over as well, but you know, I want to shine a little bit light on that. Like, you rekindled with your first wife after relocating back to California, and it happened to deal with because of your job within the industry. Like, you know what I mean? Like, that's super cool. And the breast cancer story. I mean, we all have them. And when Nelson approached me with you and the topic, I was like, what an awesome way to end this crazy 2020 that not only we had here on Stogie Geeks, but just all of the listeners that they have had, or the shop owners or the retail shop owners who tune into this show, and the manufacturers and the rollers and all the people that we interviewed, had a one roller coaster ride of 2020. And before we I want to invite you, Andy, if we have you for another 15-20 minutes. Nelson and I are going to do like a quick recap of 2020, if you want to stick around for that and chime in. Okay, cool. I just didn't know. I want to be respectful of your time. And then Nelson, you want to approach a final question for Andy?
No, actually, I want to. I know I can't call Andy a
never
friend
ask an age.
It's not my age.
Andy's not a friend yet by definition. He's definitely like an acquaintance. But I look forward to getting to know better. Like I said, I told Joe, it's funny, the listeners don't really ever get to hear the behind the scenes discussions and
God.
Texts, right?
Thank God.
Story.
Especially if I've had some bad caffeine.
Yeah,
You know what I mean?
Sometimes Joe gets going.
Because I'm always like,
no question.
that guy or gal, they ain't never coming on this show again unless Paul gives me executive orders.
and I think Andy might remember this. Like I just had a particular conversation with Andy, and I was like, man, Joe's got to talk to this guy. Like I knew we would all click, and Andy, I can't thank you enough for taking some time out of your retirement to come on the show.
It's fun. I enjoyed it.
Yeah, and also, Andy, thank you for pivoting quickly, like snapping to, because we have people who interview 3-4 weeks out and don't know what earbuds are yet, but it's all good. Thank God. That's why we have Johnny and all that stuff to put that all together.
Here's Johnny.
Johnny and Gustavo are awesome producers who produced this show there, and yeah, it's been crazy. It's been a crazy 2020. The next show will mark my third year anniversary. 17, 18, yeah. Third year anniversary. So I've completed 3 years. So I'm entering my 4th year of Stogie Geeks. I have so much to say about that. I'll wrap up on that later on. But yeah, it's you definitely got to come back.
Oh yeah, anytime.
But before you leave, what you sold cigars in a different day, right? And even though, it was 10 years ago ish, right? 8 years ago, right? What's your take on this industry? And as a whole, you can get into specifics if you want to. What's your take on this industry? And we all know what fascinates you about this industry, but what advice can you give to the new person entering the industry, either as a rep or a broker, or as a manufacturer or a boutique cigar, or even a Stogie Geek listener or a cigar enthusiast who listens to Stogie Geeks? Like, what advice, if you could kind of wrap that up, and then we'll get into our year wrap up.
Basically, stay teachable. That's the best thing I can tell anybody. If you're new and you want to get into the cigar industry as far as a manufacturer, listen to the people who've walked the path before you. You talk to Carlito or to Jorge Padron, or ask them. They're going to be there to help you. Even Rocky Patel, they're all going to be there to help you. You want to look and see what the new guys coming on board are. Join the Boutique Cigar Association. Talk to Dr. Caffey. Talk to those guys. Find the good that they're doing successful. Leave the stuff, the guys who aren't in the industry before you aside. If you're going to be a rep, don't be afraid to talk to the reps. Talk to the ones that are doing well. Talk to the ones that have been around a while and, discovered. But the bottom line is you got to stay teachable. Even after repping as long as I did, every once in a while I would find a hidden gem way to learn more. That's the key. Keep learning the whole way. If you're in Stogie Geeks and you're a cigar smoker, remember this: if you just want to smoke cigars, find what you like and like what you smoke. If you want to learn how to be a cigar aficionado, ask about retrohaling and read. Look at forums. Look at Facebook groups. And the bottom line is, it's always learning. I mean, hell, I've been smoking cigars, for 50 years, and I'm still learning every day. And the guys who taught me have forgotten more than I will ever know.
Right.
But don't be afraid to ask questions. And here's one more very important piece of advice for anybody. If you walk up to a cigar rep or someone in the industry and you have a question that you think may be silly, and you ask it, if they make you feel stupid, walk away from that person. Don't talk to that person. That's not a real cigar person. That's not somebody in the industry who's going to stay there. All right? I would rather somebody ask a stupid question in their mind and learn from the beginning than to make mistakes like a lot of people do. Hey, you guys, have you ever went out and bought yourself a real cheap cutter or a real cheap lighter, and then it goes bad after a couple of weeks? Then you buy the next level up, and it goes bad after a few months. And by the time you're done, you could have just bought a good one from the get-go.
In the beginning, yes. Yep.
Yeah.
Scissors, Joe?
Those are the kind of things. Don't be afraid to ask the guys who've been there.
Yeah.
I got one last thing to show you.
Sure.
Let me reach into my pocket here and see if I can pull it out. I bought a lighter before I worked for the company. I bought this lighter, I would say 11 years ago. Still lights first time every time.
Yep.
It was a $20 lighter. It's been in the river twice and in the washing machine once. Ask the guys at the store. It's got a lifetime warranty, but I've never had to use it. Okay? Just a little bit of research, and you'd be surprised how much money you can save and how much you can learn.
Yeah. Yeah, it is all experimental within your journey, Mm-hmm. I noticed Nelson had like a little fancy gadget he was using. What the hell was that thing?
Oh, you don't want it. It's my New England Cigar Militia pick.
Oh.
The toothpick works the same.
Oh,
Cynthia Fuente uses toothpicks to use them.
Listen, I've only used the pick 3 times. And I got to tell you, shout out to La Aurora. That La Aurora Corojo, not a sponsor, but that La Aurora Corojo, I smoked that thing down to the nub. That thing was fantastic.
Yeah, with your fancy pick.
Yes.
Oh, Nelson. I was like, oh, boy, but I didn't want to interrupt Andy and say, what the hell are you using that pick for?
Oh, let him have his fun.
I knew you appreciate it.
Yeah, I know. Here I am preaching, it's about your journey, and Nelson's journey is freaking using picks.
Let him have his fun. If he's going to be picky, let him be picky.
Yeah, right? Oh, my God.
Okay.
It's like our other co-host, Drew. He loves their gadgets. I love that
what
shit.
happened to your own journey? Like, what happened to your own journey? What's wrong with that?
Hey, man, you are right. You are right. It's you are. I'm standing corrected, okay? I can be corrected, right? You're right. And I corrected myself. I started to correct myself. It's like, I know, here I am. Oh, yeah, it's your own journey. I'm like, what the heck is that?
Johnny, can you mark that time on the episode he said I was right? I didn't want that marked that he said I was right about something.
Marked, right? Well, thank you, Andy, for appearing on Stogie Geeks, and you're going to stick around, so I'll thank you again. But, Stogie Geeks, what can I say, right? 2020 has been an amazing, intricate, crazy, pivoting year for all of us, both in and out of our premium cigar lives. Pandemic had entered our personal lives. It affected shops. It affected people. We're obviously still going through that, but trying to shed some sort of a positive vibe on 2020. I wanted to take you through a quick recap. Stogie Geeks 2020 started at episode 316. That was Drew and myself's prediction show For you Stogie Geeks who missed last episode, we did that last year. Last episode, episode 349 of Stogie Geeks. So, definitely want to check out 316, see how close we were to predictions, compare it to this year. There were some brands that have fallen off of my radar, that have been on my radar for a solid 2 years there, and there's some brands that I'm looking forward to. Can't forget 317, where Drew bought gadgets. I guess that's not going to change because now here we are at 350 and Nelson has gadgets. For those of you who follow Drew on social media, I expected the Stogie Geeks to pounce on this. He has a coffee cup that gives the temperature. Now,
is that right?
Yes. Now Jesus had given me a tongue, which tells me it's either hot or cold. But apparently, Drew likes to know. And he's not here to defend himself, so those are the breaks, right? He likes to know his temperature of his coffee.
He's a little more precise.
So through 2020 and through a pandemic, Drew had loved his gadgets. The first complaint of Stogie Geeks out of the gate came out January 20th of 2020 when I talked about PCA and got some feathers in a ruffle about how PCA can't get out of its own way, and I'm looking forward to that. And some other co-host from a host of other podcasts have said that I am not at the liberty to speak about PCA because I've never been to a PCA. I don't think podcast people belong at PCA, so my thought on that had remained the same through 2020. So, by the way, phone's been the same since 1998. You can give me a call. January 28th, we interviewed Nesta Placencia. Amazing. I cannot believe I talk about that interview at least once a month here on Stogie Geeks, and I can't believe it was that far there. Then, Drew gave us some more gadgets. He introduced us to a couple of more people. March 20th, we had Dr. Gabby Caffey on. Awesome brand. Check them out. Caffey Trading Company. Caffey, for you listeners out there, or viewers as well, is spelled K-A. I got it, Andy. Thanks. Is Dr. Gabby Caffey. Caffey Trading Company is spelled K-A-F-I-E. Throw in Caffey Trading Company in there. Awesome coffees, awesome cigars. Definitely want to check that out for sure. Drew and I did a pairing of cigars and liquor. That was when the infamous Drew came on to Stogie Geeks, and we kind of started to reveal when how he got here on Stogie Geeks. I spoke about that last episode, and I think the episode before, because of Bloody Marys. So that's been a constant theme throughout Stogie Geeks. April 14th, we had Dan Thompson from McAuliffe Cigars on. That was episode 325. You might want to write that down because there's going to be a cross-reference episode on that. That was the first week of COVID of the lockdown. And I had said that, like the 9/11 attacks, although they are different in scope, that they would leave scars on business that we're still dealing with today. And what I meant by that, and I did kind of articulate that on the interview, Stogie Geeks 325, is that, because of 9/11, we're still dealing with the TSA, and because of COVID, we're still going to deal with X, Y, and Z, or whatever. Businesses have started to pivot. To prove my point, Chipotle has started some easy come, easy go checkout processes have been improved throughout there. I don't think that that's going to go away. I think that Starbucks is now doing an express line where you can order your coffee on the app, do that there. You don't have to have any human interaction. I'm not a person of word economy, so in a post-COVID world, I'm still going to probably order my Starbucks, and I'll probably pay cash just because that's the old school way. right? There too. Nelson, I apologize for you not being able to chime in, but we're gonna get to you in chronological order.
No, it's all good, brother.
Over there too. Those are some of the episodes that really started to stick out. I have a couple more. Mike Bellady, April 21 of 2020. Again, we were still on lockdown. I remember doing that. I love MLB Cigar Ventures. Andy, you speak of getting to know someone outside of the cigar field. Mike Bellady not only sponsored my show when it was Cigar Club Radio, but having a chance to golf with him wasn't, he took us to his country club that he's a member to, had a chance to go to multiple events with him. Being on radio at the time, you're not allowed to smoke in buildings. I had a lot of non-smoking events that he went to, which always led to us going to a cigar bar afterwards and all of that type stuff there too. Drew had some more gadgets on April 27th, of course. April 28th, we had Eric Newman from JC Newman, episode 327. Super cool interview. Speaking about his son Drew and how he wanted to start doing the series. I kind of call them concept cigars, right? Like the Americana. And then he came up with another one off the top of my head. I'm having a brain fart. I'm sorry. I'm having a crazy day. But and so it was real cool to see that. Oh, he wanted to do the El Electora series where you can actually go to JC Newman, to the factory, rent out the room if you want to, obviously in a post-COVID era. They had their anniversary this year. What a year to have an anniversary. We were supposed to film Stogie Geeks in April sometime there for the opening up for that when they did their factory renovations. I will get my keister down there for sure. On Cinco de Mayo, we interviewed Alec and Bradley from Alec Bradley. That was a super cool interview. There, learning about their stick. They recently came out with their third stick. Don't be surprised next year if they come out with two more, sticks. I'm looking forward because all of their sticks are kind of like all over the map taste-wise, in my opinion. And I think that a lot of branding and experimentation and, fan base is to come there. Probably the most talked about interview, at least from my mouth, is May 18th. You know who that is, Nelson? No?
Sorry, I was on mute. I'm suspecting it starts with an M.
M? No. Noel Rojas.
No? Your favorite guy.
Noel, he's my
Master Blender.
He's my 2020. He's my 2020. Time Magazine has like the thing, I guess,
Man of the Year.
Great cigars.
Yeah. I'm just, never really been a fanboy until 2020. You know what I mean? I do wear my Noel Rojas hats. I just don't wear them on set, but they are in the other parts of my life there. Right after that, we interviewed Eric Bay of Black Star Line Cigars, another up-and-comer there too. That was episode 330. Nelson's boy was June 8th. Who's your boy, Nelson?
June 8th, Mr. Saka.
Yeah, Steve Saka, right, from Dunbar and Tobacco and Trust. That was a super cool interview. I apologize if I'm skipping through. I just could probably do a whole episode on interviews and a recap there. July 17th, we had Andy Yaffe from McAuliffe Cigars. It was great to hear his story and how he became with his position over with McAuliffe Cigars. That was that was an interesting interview there. Who else? I only got 2 more pages. Cool. Almost there, Andy. Almost there, right?
Is that all?
Hey, I gave you the exit. You chose to stay, sir. July 27th, This guy always brings a smile to my face. Always, always, always. Enrique Sanchez, Global Premium Cigars. He's
too.
He's always smiling, Andy. Always smiling. Like
man.
And getting to know, he's got little ones at home. I have a little one at home, and they're never quiet. Now the good news is they're never quiet. The bad news is his kids are like 8 years older than mine, and they're still not quiet. So I don't know if 8 years from now I'm still going to be saying my kid's not quiet. But then Nelson has older kids, and they're not quiet either. So
True story.
all right. Yeah. Oh, August 6th, Nelson has arrived here at G Unit Studios for the first time. Wow, it's been that long, Nelson? Wow. I thought it was cut like a month or two.
I know. I still feel like a newbie, but
Dude,
I don't know. That was pretty cool. I was a little starstruck that day, to be honest.
And then, of course, as you were privy to, Andy, Nelson walks in, and he was never introduced to the 10 minutes of chaos before each show. Right. But anyway, on August 6th, we did the JC Newman Jaguar unboxing. That was really cool. That was a super cool. Thank you for JC Newman for allowing us to do that. That was awesome. August 21st, we interviewed Nick Gervais and David Rivera. One was from the Martinez hand-rolled cigars, and the other one was from a cigar club. So, a cigar club started getting, you can see where the Nelson influence is starting to come in, right? Like introducing the cigar clubs into the show and whatnot. We always knew they were a thing. It's just bandwidth for us is pretty tight. So thank you for your efforts on that, Nelson, and for keeping an eye out, which is how we got to meet Andy, for sure. September 23rd, Tim Wong. He's a broker, and and he's a broker, and also represents AJ Fernandez Cigar Company. Interesting stories. What I love about these stories is, we talk about product launches with specifically Pier 28. And how he held off because of the year and all of that type stuff too. So that was episode 340. September 23rd, old school favorite of mine, George Rico, Gran Habano Cigars. I love his creative stuff. Right, I actually smoked my last second series Zulu that was out. Andy, so I'm all done with those from there. So that lasted me a couple of years there. He comes out with some creative stuff as well as his kind of flagship stuff. What I love about him, Andy, is he marches to the beat of his own drum. You know what I mean? Like he does George, and that's it, man. He don't get involved in any of this craziness there. Nelson. September 24th, Nelson started the news.
I can't believe you documented that.
Yeah. So September 24th, Nelson had industry news and stuff like that, and that and that's been a ongoing thing since then. Nelson, do you have any news for this week?
I don't know if I hate you or love you right now. I just don't know.
Right, Nelson, come on. I'm giving everybody a recap. Do you have any news, or do you need time to think about it?
Let me see. Do I have any news?
As you know, all Stogie Geeks shows are unscripted, so I'll come back to that.
Yeah,
right?
come back to that.
Unless my
I'll come up with something.
The Fuente and the Padron compilation card.
Oh, I already did that in the news.
Oh, no, he's all over that. Nelson likes to be like first like person. And
Ugly Kings, the Pinks.
Yeah, well, out of all of Nelson's news, I was floored by one story. But anyway, right? I was like, oh, that's pretty interesting. Next. There's no offense to Nelson. You're doing a great job. With your news. I want to do like a do. Nelson has
Johnny,
news.
Johnny owes me. Our producer owes me for 2021. I want a little lead in to the news.
So Nelson, find us some news because then it'll be a well-rounded show. October 5th, this cigar is out of the La Aurora factory. Emperor's Cut Cigars. We interviewed Gregory Willis and Daryl Redmond from Emperor's Cut Cigars. Got to hear their story. I mean, I don't know if you ever had one, Andy. Did you ever hear of them?
Which one?
Emperor's Cut Cigars. They're out of the La Aurora factory.
Can't say I have yet.
Let me tell you something. Everyone who started this collaboration of work does facets in other industries, and it's kind of like, I mean, Nelson, you remember this. I'm sure
I was actually going to say.
I'm sure. Wait a minute. I'm sure Andy wasn't watching cartoons in the '80s, but
no, I
they
was
remind me
say,
of
Joe,
Voltron. You remember Voltron, Nelson?
Oh, fuck yeah!
Well, right?
Yes, I remember Voltron.
Like, dude, they remind me of this guy is good at sales. This guy is good at shipping and logistics. This guy is an engineer. And I'm missing 4 other facets of the business because I'm trying to do a quick recap. Why I thought it was gonna be 10 minutes. I'm already like 18 minutes deep, right? They remind me like the Voltron cigar company, right?
If I can say, Joe, that Emperor's Cut, I think it was Greg and Daryl, right, that we interviewed with.
Yes.
Yeah, that was one of my favorite. I mean, granted, I haven't been on the show long, but that was one of my favorite interviews on Stogie Geeks. Was with the guys from Emperor's Cut, and I've said, like, I'm gonna say it again: sexiest name for a cigar in the world, Natural Pleasure. Love that cigar.
Yep.
And I've since had, and I told them that on the interview too. I'm like, that's the sexiest name I ever heard for a stick.
Yeah.
And the Jazz that they just came out with, also a fantastic cigar. Not a sponsor. I'm just telling you from my own palate. Great sticks and great interview. Absolutely.
Yeah, absolutely. It's definitely one of those interviews that really sticks out for sure. There. Can't forget October 12th. Raul from CLE. What can I say about Raul? Raul. I love Raul. I call Raul like 10 minutes before a show. Want to come on Stogie Geeks? Because the guy bailed. Sure, let's do it, Joe. And he comes right on and awesome. And he actually, Andy, and you met Christian, so you could either have something to say or kind of reflect on this. But like Christian Aroa is one of those people who remind me, that's okay. We love dogs, right? Just dogs that don't bite. And whatchamacallit, like Christian was so like aggravated at like, like the pandemic and being stagnant and all of that. So he flew his crew to do like mini events and all that stuff. And the windshield cracked. So
on his airplane?
Yeah, on his airplane, the windshield cracked. And like Raul was like, well, I don't know what's going on, but they didn't tell him till they land, and he's telling us the story. This is Stogie Geeks episode 343.
Somebody kicked up a rock all the way to the airplane. Huh?
Something happened, and the freaking windshield cracked, and they had to like make an emergency landing, and Raul was telling the story like the land's on the other side of the plane. Like, I don't know where I am. You can't go into the cockpit and like say, hey, is everything okay? You know what I mean? Because everything wasn't okay at the time, because you really don't know how severe it is, right? Until you land, I guess, right? So that was a fascinating, like, insider kind of stuff there.
Raul, it's Johnny. I'm still waiting for my spacesuit.
Oh, Johnny. Yeah, Raul. Johnny's still waiting for his spacesuit for sure. So
Christian is a dead stick. Yeah.
Christian, like, and that's and the year before when I interviewed Christian, we totally talked about cigars for like 10 minutes. And we spent like an hour and change talking about his son's baseball career. He was actually at a baseball field with his son doing baseball. And I got time for Stogie Geeks. Let's do that too. So it was cool to grab his attention there as well. October 16th, Kevin from Rockefeller Cigars. Always love when Kevin comes on the show. Looking forward to what he texted me some stuff. We talk a lot about stocks off air and stuff like that. And I told him that in my next life, when I get more bandwidth, I want to do a stock show with him. and have it subscription only. I told them that I have great attorneys, so we're all set for like stock advice and all of that stuff too. So we're good to go. We're definitely gonna have him on and do a recap there too. Can't forget Nelson's boy Pat Pato from Pato Cigars, episode 345.
Why is he my boy?
Because he was a guy we interviewed, and then we couldn't use his last name, so that was kind of whacked. Nelson's boy again, Lee Mosh from Stolen Throne Cigars, episode 348.
Great interview.
That was cool. Of course, Andy, have you heard of Stolen Throne?
Haven't heard of them yet.
All right. Well, let me ask you this question. Are you a stick chaser like Nelson? Do you get like crazy?
I like stick hunter. You can call me stick hunter. I like that better.
There are some cigars that come out and people like Kevin. Kevin, got in touch with me and wanted to send me some cigars, and he's one of the guys I'm trying to work with offline since we brought that up earlier.
Yep.
And so there are some sticks that I do chase. I help out, Gabby Caffey from time to time with stuff and helping him to get explored. But every once in a while, I see a cigar that's very intriguing to me, and I look for it. I wait and see who I can get it from, or if it's not. The problem is a lot of cigars aren't available in California, until they've been out a while.
Mm-hmm.
So I got to contact people from other areas.
Right.
See, you're on TV, little boy.
Then we had Lee Mosh from Stolen Throne, like I said. That was a super cool interview for sure. There. And then 349, we had our cigar prediction show. That was our last episode before this episode there too. So kind of a blur when I look at like all of that and what we did. It's, to me, it seems like a short list considering that everything that has happened in our industry. But that's what we were able to squeeze in and produce for the Stogie Geek listener for 2020. So,
hey Joe, favorite interview of the year?
Oof.
Tough one, right?
It is a tough one because this year was different because most of them, I'm trying to think, they were all virtual this year.
That's the problem.
They were all. Now I know that's really cliche for some of the newer cigar podcasts that are out. It's like, well, I've been virtual all the time, but like we're used to having people pop in Stogie Geeks, random people. Jose Blanco was in town and popped in, and obviously he hasn't been here this year. Manuel Noah would pop in. Jack Toronto popped in. I'm going like Q4 of 2019. Yeah, that's what year we were in before. Yeah. So it's, if you could follow me around with cameras and see what we do in a day. It makes me giddy, and I do it. So and so we would have like a lot of random pop-ups that would come in, and Nelson, that came to an end. You know what I mean? Like that, and then obviously in the beginning of March, we went to a cybersecurity conference in the last week of February and came home and landed, and then all kind of hell broke loose with this pandemic. So everything's been virtual. It hasn't been a challenge, but I think to answer your question, Nelson, everything's been heartfelt. Hearing Mr. Newman speak about his son, that was a heartfelt interview. Hearing Alec and Bradley talk about their dad, it's a heartfelt interview. Hearing Raul talk about Christian in the airplane and, is he going to die? Is he not going to? That's a heartfelt interview, Stolen Throne, the Empress Cuts, George Rico just doing his thing. There were a couple interviews that we normally get that we just didn't get, just because of time and scheduling. and those would be set up. But I guess, you know, if I had to pick one, I would have to go with the Nesta Plasencia interview, right? Or the Steve Saka interview, and then the Noel Rojas interview. And then for selfish reasons, the Dan Thompson interview for McAuliffe.
All right, so almost all of them.
So no, that was only 4. That was 4 out of 22.
You know, I've only been on the podcast for a short
Right,
stint,
so
but
yeah, so
I
don't run your mouth. Don't run your mouth. It was 4 out of 22. So
All right.
like dealing with like Nesta, like he's one of those people like you always learn, right? And my takeaways is when I have a chance to interview someone like Nesta, it's a learning experience for me, right? It's a learning experience for the Stogie Geeks, for the co-host, for the producers, and to hear the stories. And you know, like we talked about like Nesta and his kids wanted to get into the industry, but he had some rules first in order for them to get an interview. You know what I mean? He talked about how he wanted his kids to go through college first and have that background. Now, easily, let's face it, you know, if you're Alec and Bradley and your dad's Alan Rubin, or if you're Nesta Plasencia's kids, or you know, Ernesto Perez Carrillo's kids, right? You can you get a great head start, right, in the industry for sure. But you have to carve out your own marking, and more importantly, like you have to get your own education and then do that because you don't know where this industry is going, and you don't know where it's going to turn into. Because alcohol and tobacco and firearms are very fickle industries, kind of like the oil industry, right? You know, you get governmental support and big contracts and all of that. You know, life is good, stock is up, right? But a big takeaway I got from Kevin from Rockefeller is, you know, he was talking about stock advice, but this also can be cascaded into the premium cigar industry. Is, you know, you gotta know when you gotta hope that you're right, and you gotta know when it's you gotta sit tight and be right. You know what I mean? And
yeah,
and so all those are all takeaways, and I think that from a caliber of interview perspective, this year we have received more heartfelt interviews out of them, and I think a lot of that is a reflection of the pandemic, or they have more time on their hands.
Yeah, and I'll be honest, it was kind of a loaded question, right? Because, and I think you kind of hit on it without realizing like that you were hitting on it. Is every interview is different, right? I mean, for example, I loved Emperor's Cut because I loved hearing about a cigar brand that is trying to come up with a new product. Raul. I mean, if I had to say like what was my favorite episode, the podcast with Raul from CLE was probably the best one.
Yeah.
That's my number one, because you could see like his passion, and he's fun, and you know his stories about, you know, the plane and all that. It was just great. It was great. But then you got like a Lee Marsh from Stolen Throne Cigars, who's also like an up and coming. I'd say more up and coming than like an Emperor's Cut,
sure,
if you will, more boutique, right?
Yep.
Than Emperor's Cut. So yeah, is there really a favorite? It depends on how you look at it at the end of the day. Like you got to your point, like there's a heartfelt, but not just a heartfelt interview. There's an angle to each interview. Like you said, like the discussion about the stocks, like that's not something we typically talk about in an interview, right? Like every single interview is so, and I know this sounds so cliche, but like every interview to me, and I am a listener too, I go back and listen to them. They're just so special and unique because you get something different out of every interview.
You do, and I think a lot of that has to deal with the show platform. As you know, Andy, we didn't talk before the 10 minutes of chaos before the show, and I had met you, and we were able to pick up a conversation, because one of the things I like from interviewees is if you can't sit here for an hour and a half or so, it's never an hour and a half, it always goes over, right? But if you can't sit here and talk about your craft, then don't come on the show. You know what I mean? Like, you know,
right on.
I can tell you, having done interviews, my most difficult interview, and someone who has word economy like crazy still, so it's been 6 years that I've been interviewing people in the cigar community, either via Stogie Geeks or Cigar Club Radio, Glenn Case still holds the torch for word economy. You ask him a question, it's like a short sentence, next question. Like, boom. Like, you know what I mean? And so I remember being on the radio and like I'm asking him questions and I burned through. Now, you know, when you do show now on the radio, I did show prep because I had commercials that I didn't know that I was saying until like 10 minutes before because other people would stick commercials in. And I burned through all my questions in 15 minutes with Glenn. And I was like, oh my God, I have 45 more minutes. What am I going to talk about? And it was cool. It was a challenging. It was a challenge.
That's funny. Andy knows Glenn.
Yeah. So what's your take on Glenn when it comes to word economy? Would you agree?
Yes.
There you go. You know, so anyway.
There you go.
Anyway, Andy, I want to thank you for appearing on Stogie Geeks. I want to
thank you for having me.
Yeah, I want to thank you for sticking around as well. You know, you got to hear the our 30-minute rant on the year. There, I really wish I had more time to express to the Stogie Geeks listeners, to our producers, Johnny and Gustavo, and to the staff here at Security Weekly that allow us to have this platform. Special thanks to Paul Asadorian. It's been a privilege and an honor, and I'm about to start my fourth year here on the show, and super excited to what 2021 can bring. Nelson, you're a great addition to the show, so welcome here. Drew, who halfway through the year changed jobs and is like Magnum PI. You can never find him, or James Bond or something like that. I do like Emperor's Cut's next cigar. Could be Voltron, right? That could happen here too. Yes, we had a lot of firsts here, interview wise. Here it was a great year of interviews. Stogie Geeks, I want to thank you for listening and watching and giving us the email. Don't forget, send all of your hate email to Nelson at stogiegeeks.com.
Thank you.
He will answer it. Nelson, I am going to call Steve Saka and get you a interview at least in Q1.
Dude, if you can do 2021 with Saka, I mean,
I'm gonna call him.
You want to know what a geek I am?
Call his wife.
Guys, I think
Call
Joe
Cindy.
knows this, but I'm gonna throw this out there. I'm gonna plug myself a little bit. Cigar_squad on Instagram. But one of my highlights of 2020 was Steve Saka commented on one of my Instagram posts.
Wow.
And I was like stoked because that is, and just so people know, the reason I'm a fanboy is there is not one Dunbarton tobacco stick I've ever had that I disliked. I liked them all. And Joe, if I could, while I still have the camera.
Oh, do you have news?
I want to thank you to Paul, 100%. I know we don't get to chat often, but the fact that this show exists is fantastic. And obviously, Johnny and Gustavo, like, you guys are kicking ass producing this show. I'm always like blown away how quickly you guys turn this thing around. So hats off to you guys. And Andy, again, thank you for joining us today.
Absolutely.
Thank you, man. It's been fun, you know.
Absolutely. Andy, stick on after we do the wrap up. I just want to talk to you for a couple seconds there too. Well, Stogie Geeks, it is that time of the year where I this is probably the one time a year that I get lost for words there. I cannot thank Paul Asadorian for allowing this show to continue. I cannot thank Johnny and Gustavo. Cannot thank the listeners who watch us and listen to us and flash us emails and they share stories with me. By the way, my email is joe@stogiegeeks.com, and they share stories and I try to keep up with everyone. I think I'm doing a good job with that there too. It's been an amazing year. It's been a heartfelt year. It's been a crazy pivoting year. I'm looking well into 2021. Not only what this platform is capable of doing, but the fact that like we're still here and we're still staying strong and we're still staying safe. And Stogie Geeks, I want to just say thank you for all the opportunities and to everyone who has participated on this show and had made this show happen. Happy holidays, Merry Christmas. and Happy New Year. Be safe, wear a mask, and remember, we keep the conversation going all week long. Visit StogieGeeks.com. Visit us on Facebook, Nelson Cigar Squad, Instagram. Check them out. Behind every cigar, there's a story worth knowing. Get to your local brick and mortar. I think Andy had brought that point up. Andy, thank you for appearing on Stogie Geeks. Stogie Geeks, we will see you in the new year. Happy New Year. Peace.